Alrighty, welcome back. So now we're going to talk a little bit about your cost structure, right? It's really important for you to know your numbers. It's really important for you to feel confident in your numbers because that is what basically is going to tell you how well your business is actually doing in terms of what are your not only fixed costs but also variable costs, right? What are the things you have to pay and what are the things that might change kind of as you scale the business or contingent upon different things as you're scaling the business. So fixed and variable costs. So you hear this a lot. And so just really quickly, I'm going to go over them. So fixed costs are expenses that are going to remain the same no matter how much your company is actually producing, right? So what that means is, for example, rent, right? Rent is a fixed cost. If you sell one t-shirt or you sell 50 t-shirts, your rent is going to actually be the same for that physical space that you're renting, right? Variable costs are things that change based on how much you actually produce and sell, right? So if production increases or decreases, you may have sort of variable costs, right? This happens a lot with people who are sort of doing things like food businesses, right? So the more that you're actually creating or producing or making, the more that cost is actually going to be. Same thing with like manufacturing, right? If you're making more of a particular product and you need more raw materials, then that cost of raw materials, while that might be the same that you're paying per bundle of raw material that you get, you're just going to need more of it. So that cost is going to be more than it would be. It's not flat every month because you're using it in production. So a couple of just different examples of fixed versus variable costs. And I won't go through all of these as you can see here, but things like rent, legal fees, salaries. So if you have a salary, which you are saying you're going to pay somebody over the year, like that won't change whether they work, 40 hours or 60 hours, right? If you have it structured in that kind of way versus individualized sort of wage labor, which does change, right? If you need people to take more shifts, if you're ramping up production, that would kind of go into the variable costs. Interest on loan payments, those are static. Those happen every month, and you would wind up having those as fixed costs. Variable costs, materials, as I mentioned before, things like direct labor, utilities, shipping expenses, potentially vehicle expenses, maybe variable costs, right? Like if gas prices go up, then it's going to cost you more to actually sort of use that vehicle, which might impact other parts of the business. So I say all that to say you want to make sure that you're taking your time to dive into each of the things that you're paying for, not only knowing what they are and knowing how much it is, but knowing whether it falls into the bucket of a fixed cost or a variable cost, right? That helps you with everything from cash flow to projecting moving forward so that you know where the business is and how you're actually operating the business as you continue to move forward. So when looking at your cost, you really should be thinking about a few things. What fixed costs are necessary for you to keep selling your product or service, right? What's locked in stone that you can't change, that won't shift, that there aren't discounts for, that there's not going to be anything that's going to be changing on a month-to-month basis, right? What are the variable costs, right? And specifically the variable costs that are really going to impact the business, right? I mentioned before in the example of if you're producing something or you're creating a physical product, if you need materials to make that product, then those variable costs, if they change dramatically, then you might have to think about, okay, well, do I have to change pricing? Like, what do I do right now with a lot of the inflation? Like, that's a big concern, right? Because there may be a variable cost, like the cost it costs you to get it from you to where you're actually going to be selling it, right? That goes up 20%. Do you have to actually raise prices by 20%? What resources do you actually have that might reduce the cost of delivering the product or service, right? Going back to thinking about what are some of the options that you have? What are the networks that you have that could be helpful? How much do you have available or access to, right? So from a capital standpoint, do you have access to credit lines? Do you have access to other things where things like buying in bulk might be able to be and available to you if you have it? And if you don't, like, what are the things that you can do to make sure that you understand, okay, well, I can't do this, so I need to make sure that I'm either selling in smaller quantities or my pricing, again, going back to this, right? And what isn't necessary right now to sell your product or service? a lot of times when you start going through the books, people start to see, oh, well, I'm paying for this software that I don't use, or I'm paying for this service that I only use once that isn't very helpful, or wow, I didn't try to negotiate a better rate or deal. I just, got insurance 2 years ago and I've just been paying the same rate. So like, what are the things that you need to know that are necessary or not necessary now, or that you can negotiate or renegotiate in terms of thinking about your cost, right? All really important things to kind of think about in the large scheme of things. Again, you're going to have a lot of time to sit down and do some one-on-one time with some financial experts, and they're going to be able to help you out. But want to make sure that you have an understanding of what this looks like and how you can structure it. And we'll be back.